in these situations where we've had our wildfires in the past, retired Fire Captain Bob Lyon has joined us, and he's with us on the phone right now. Bob, I understand you also live in the area, so what can you, one, tell us from your perspective from where you live, what's going on, and from your expertise as a firefighter, what's happening right now?
Sure. Yeah, I only live about 2 miles from Wildcat, probably about 4 miles as the crow flies from where the fire's actually at. So I can see the smoke plume from here. And yeah, you guys are right. You know, the air tankers, luckily the air tankers are based here in Ramona, so they have a pretty quick turnaround. So they should be able to get a lot of drops onto the fire. And the other benefit they have is at this time of year we have daylight for quite a while. So they'll have several hours before they actually have to shut down for the evening. Hopefully they'll get a wrap on it. In that area, you've got terrain issues because there's not a lot of roads in that particular area over there. There are some few homes spread out through that area, which is one of their big concerns, I think.
Bob, I know we're all watching the sky, and I know you're a few miles away, might not be able to answer this, but I'm wondering, there aren't a lot of roads, so in fact, the vehicles that are traveling the roads may be fairly apparent to the people out there. Do you know what they're able to do in terms of, you know, on the ground? Do you see too many fire trucks, or does it look like this thing is mainly the 3 helos and 2 planes that we're watching?
No, I've been seeing a lot of vehicles and forestry vehicles going down the road headed towards Wildcat. So they've got a lot of ground units on the way too. And they'll need those guys to get into the hills to take care of it. The tankers and the helicopters, the idea there is to try to slow it down and cut it off. And then the ground people will go in and try to, you know, finish up any of the hot spots to keep it contained. But from the roads, they've got Wildcat shut down from San Vicente. So the smoke looks like it's blowing well to the east over the estates. Country estates, looks like the smoke's headed towards that direction.
So, Bob, from your knowledge, how many homes are in that area? Can you give us an idea of what might be threatened? Because some of this is mostly Indian reservation, right?
Yeah, exactly. But they do have a lot of homes back in there, and there's several people who live off the grid back in that area. There's probably 30 to 40 homes spread out through that area where it's kind of the fire's taking place at. Depending upon which direction it decides to move in.
And you said that it was moving toward the direction of country estates?
Well, the smoke plume's going that way, but they're quite a ways from the country estates. So I think that the units will probably be able to get it, you know, unless something unusual happens, like they have a real, it hits some very heavy terrain and very heavy fuel loads, or the wind picks up. The wind right now, they've got a breeze definitely blowing to the east, but it's not a real severe wind, so the tankers and helicopters are going to be able to operate fairly reasonably in that area, and it shouldn't travel too fast. So, you know, from my vantage point, it looks like hopefully they'll be able to get a wrap on it, but you can never say with these sort of things.
Right, and many things are very different than they were in the past, and we know that our response is just so much quicker, so much more organized, and communication is better. So all of those things, but how long have you been in that area? Because as we even begin to talk about the plume of smoke going in the direction of country estates, all of us who have been here for prior fires know that's a very familiar sound.
Yeah, well, I've been out here 7 years, and I moved out here when they had the fires in '07, actually, and I actually was closing my house in escrow when the fires were going on. So my friends kept driving by and telling me the house was still standing. That's how we kind of knew it was still there.
We're seeing one of the air tankers now fly into that smoke. The latest report from CAL FIRE is now the Wildcat Fire is, they're calling it, is currently 35 to 40 acres with a rapid rate of spread. Bob, we have seen a couple of helos come in and drop those crews. You were talking about those guys a little bit earlier. When we're talking about an area this big, 35 to 40 acres, they're fighting multiple different little hot spots. Can you talk about the difficulty of their job, having to go in there, what they're trying to do and to keep this from spreading, and how they attack this, because they can't get it all at once, certainly.
Right. Well, the idea with any of these fires is they try to pincer them off. You try to, instead of the fire spreading, you try to control the spread and try to kind of get at the flanks of the fire. You usually take the left flank and the right flank, and they travel along those after they've anchored it, and then they'll try to slowly get towards the front and get the thing pinched off. So the smaller you make the front of the fire, then the smaller the rate of spread. But it takes a while to do it, and it's really dependent upon terrain, how difficult it is to get crews in there. You mentioned the helicopters dropping the crews off. Those are Wildcat crews. And they're usually anywhere from 5 to 10, guys, and they'll be supported by the helicopter. And the ones that are trained up to that point are allowed to cut on a live fire line. So they'll be traveling along the fire, being supported by the helicopter, cutting brush, trying to make a fire break all the way along it. And that's what they're doing. They're trying to cut the fire off and kind of get towards the head of the fire, they call it.
Wow, sounds kind of like you were describing the hot shot teams.
Yeah, exactly.
So we just saw just a second ago, we saw some crews that were driving in there, able to make their way in. I'm assuming, Bob, those are just some fire roads, from some fire trails that are cut into the hillside there in order for something like this, when something like this happens. Is that right?
Yeah, they've got fire roads back through there. Some of those are just residential, dirt roads for people to access their properties. And there's roads all dispersed throughout there. And CAL FIRE's done a pretty good job over the years of they pretty much know where those roads are. The crews have been out here a long time, so they're pretty well aware how to try to get back into those spots. And they're off-road vehicles. They're going to do the same thing. It's dependent upon terrain, of course, but if terrain is acceptable to their vehicles being able to get out there and get into it, then they'll do the same thing. They'll drive along next to the fire. The same thing, trying to fence off the head of the fire. And we're just trying to basically get ahead of it so you can stop the rate of spread.
Bob, as a former fire captain, tell us right now, it's 5:45. We've just seen some of the firefighters, on the ground coming in, and we know we've had the helos and the planes in the air. Tell us what they're trying to do right now.
Well, time is of the essence at this point. We know in the evening we're going to lose the aircraft, so they're going to try to get as much done with the air cuts as they possibly can. And the idea probably is going to be to try to get this thing cut off so they can cut the rate of spread and stop the fire from advancing. Then the hand crews in the evening, they'll be able to go out and extinguish hot spots and continue cutting a line around the fire. And the idea is to try to control it as fast as it's moving, as big as it might get. The idea is going to be to try to get this thing slowed down so that by evening they can kind of control it, and then in the morning get the tankers back up and hand crews if that's necessary, and get in there and get the thing extinguished and completely circumvented.